So if you can figure it out early on, I love to see people change majors because it means they're trying.
Today we have a special guest, Amy Horner. She is a change enthusiast, business strategy consultant, keynote speaker, and podcast host. She guides professionals through change by helping them envision, create, and navigate a plan that leads to a successful future. Thank you so much, Amy, to come to our podcast today.
Thank you for having me, Rosie. I'm excited to be here and talk with you.
I'm very excited, especially when I look at your CPA journey. It's just amazing. First and foremost, can you just introduce a little bit about yourself to our audience?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to do that. And I'm excited to talk about CPA journeys today. Mine has been what I guess we could call non-traditional, although some people might say I've had more of a portfolio career. I started my career in public accounting, and that was about as normal and traditional as it got. I've had several different types of jobs. I've worked for large organizations and small organizations, and even a nonprofit. So I've done a lot of different things, and it's been so rewarding and so interesting and just a wonderful learning experience for me. So I'm excited to share it with y'all.
That's amazing because people can learn so much from your journey because you have a variety of experience from different firms, different aspects of the CPA journey. Let's go from very beginning. When you just start your college, why did you choose accounting?
I knew before I even applied to colleges that I wanted to major in accounting. When I was in high school, I had the opportunity to listen to a presentation from a gentleman who was a partner in a Big Four firm. He was an audit partner. And hearing what auditors had the opportunity to do on a regular basis, that they got to talk with different clients and understand how things were working or not working as they were going through the process of ensuring that the financials were free from material misstatement. Of course, we cannot not do that as an auditor, but just the variety of the work, the opportunity to be part of really your local community. When you're an auditor, you're everywhere. And it appealed to me so much. On all my college applications, I declared accounting is my major. So I knew I'm lucky, and it is unusual. Most people don't know in high school what they want to major in or what they want their career to be. But I did. At least from at the very beginning of my career.
High school, wow. I did not know what I wanted to be in high school. When I just joined high school, I thought I would become a doctor. And then I was like, I'm not so afraid of blood. I'm not going to be a doctor. That's why I chose accounting, because I was like, it's just numbers, paperwork. I can do that.
No suction needed, right?
Nope. And you mentioned that at the speaking event from Big Four, is that why you joined KPMG after you graduate?
Yes, I had set a goal when I got to college, and I worked for those 4 years of making sure that not only my curriculum was appropriate, but I had done the networking I needed to do. I had joined the clubs and done the activities that I needed to do. So in addition to playing soccer in college, I was also in the Student Accounting Association and a few of the other business clubs that got me in front of the recruiters for the Big Four firms. At that time, I do have to be honest with you, it was Big Six, but not too close thereafter. It became Big Four. And when you want to do that, you do have to be very dedicated to being in front of those people. There aren't a lot of offers that come from the Big Four, and I knew that. And so I had sent those attentions really early and was so thrilled and so honored, really, to have the opportunity to start my career in the Big Four.
You mentioned about networking. I know a lot of students, they kind of like, how can I start my journey? How can I get my first job? How can I get my internship? So with the networking experience and also you involved in a lot of activities on campus, can you share more detail about how those experiences lead you to get a job or land a job at Big Four?
Absolutely. As when you network, you start to know people and they begin to get to know you. And there's a saying really that resonates so loudly with me is the more touch points you have with a person, the more they're going to know, like, and trust you. And once you can establish those three things, people are much more likely to want to work with you or to bring you into either their organization, their life, their consultancy, whatever it may be. And so having those multiple touch points is critical. When we're talking about students networking for their first job, one thing to keep in mind if you're the student is the adults in the room, or the people who are already in their careers and are working, they understand that you're new to this. They know you might be nervous. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Simply talk to them. They're people too. They might have had long careers. They might be your parents' age, and that's okay. Just talk to them, and you'd be surprised how far that will get you.
It's very scary to start a conversation. Like the first second, even just stand up and say, "Hi, my name is Rosie."
Mm-hmm.
It was very nervous for me. Even I'm a very social person.
Yeah.
I was like, how can I start the conversation? How can I continue the conversation? And I also spoke at multiple student events on campus, and they always ask me, what are tips that you have for students? So networking, I agree, is really extremely helpful. So students, please just go out and make some connections, attend some networking events. You never know what can lead you to the next job or even the first internship. As working at Big Four, I know that is very challenging, where people always say a lot of hours. So I'm wondering, how did the position at KPMG shape your understanding of accounting practice and also the industry?
It's funny when we talk about hours, when you are working in public accounting, you have to keep track of your hours. It's been so interesting to me as I've moved away from that, how, first of all, I don't miss tracking all my hours because that is a little bit of work you have to do every day. But I still schedule myself like that because that was the basis of my career. So when you talk about the hours, I think you need to balance what you're working with your impact and understanding the impact that you're making. And this isn't just in public, this is in any role that you have. What is the impact that you are making on others? And what is that position's impact on you? And I think if you can balance those two things, your learning and what you're taking away and how your career is evolving, then it doesn't seem like it's a tremendous amount of hours.
Wow. So talking about the hours, can you share how many hours you actually work?
Right now, I would say I'm probably in the between 38 and 45 hour a week range. So on average, a 40-hour a week. I can tell you so many history stories, the legacy of Amy Horner stories, where several times I worked until midnight and got up at 6 a.m. and did everything all over again. I think you have different stamina for it when you're earlier in your career. It's certainly easier, you're eager, there's so much to learn and absorb, and they are still long hours. You're still expected to have your work. Now, I have so many different things that I'm doing, right? I do a lot of networking. I travel for speaking engagements. I'm working on my doctorate. Last night, I had the opportunity to guest lecture in a classroom for a friend of mine who's an innovation and entrepreneurship professor. I don't count those in my 40-hour week, but some people probably would. So I think it's just back to that impact of where you're spending your time. Are you logging it as work? Is it work to you? Or is it something you do that you enjoy?
So you say that something you do that you enjoy, you mean passion.
Yes.
So people should find something they have a strong passion about it. However, a lot of times people just struggle to figure out where their passion is. How can they figure out their passion? Do you have any tips about that for people who change majors multiple times, who change job multiple times, but struggling to find their own path?
I think find what interests you, find what motivates you. For accounting majors, if we want to talk about that specifically, since you and I both know what it's like to be an undergrad accounting major, debits and credits might not really fire you up. You might not feel passion about a multi-lined balance journal entry. You may, but most people probably not. But what is that journal entry leading to? What story are the financials telling you? Does being able to understand and tell that story to others who don't speak accounting, who don't speak that language of business, is that motivating to you? Does that spark passion? Or is it the organization that you're working for? I know so many people that have passion because they really believe in what their organizations do, not only in the nonprofit sector, but in any sector. And they're proud to be a part of that. And they have passion for their work, even sometimes those not so fun little tasks that we all have to do. But you have passion, and that balances out having to, some of the have to do's versus the want to do's, or the things that really ignite you. I agree with what you said. It can be tough to find passion in college. You may change majors multiple times. And if you can do that, I'd prefer to see people change and eventually find what they want than stick to something that doesn't really ignite their excitement, because then you're going to change mid-career more than likely, right? So if you can figure it out early on, I love to see people change majors because it means they're trying.
Yeah, so talking about change, is that why you change your job from KPMG to GSSM PAS now is acquired by Grant Thornton?
So that's a really funny story. And that's one of my first stories about understanding change and understanding that there are going to be significant things, occurrences, situations in your life that are outside of your control. And how you react to them will dictate pretty much your happiness, your future, your success, your you name it, right? Anything. And when I was at KPMG, I started my career at KPMG in Pittsburgh, which is my hometown. Very proud to be from Western Pennsylvania. And right when I had started, there were some significant changes in the industries and sectors that were dominant to historic Pittsburgh. And because of that, about 6 months into my time with KPMG, they went through a very large reduction in force. And I was caught up in that. I had only been there a few months, and at my level, it was done based on billable hours, which is something I had zero control over, right? I just went and did the work where it was assigned to me. And keep in mind, I had wanted to work in the Big Four for probably 8 preceding years. So this was fairly devastating to me. This was everything I had worked so hard for. And the way I reacted to it, like at first I was stunned. I had never known anyone to lose their job before. This was new for me. I was 22. But I knew that I had a choice. I could either let it define me or I could grow from it. And what I chose to do was find a recruiter in Charlotte, North Carolina, and come down and interview with wherever he sent me. And I ended up with multiple job offers, and I got to choose. And I chose to work with GSSM. It was a mid-sized firm. I was a little stung by the Big Four at that time. And it was a mid-sized firm, and I'm so happy I chose it because they were in the middle of the sector and they were growing so quickly. It gave me opportunities faster. I was able to move up and take on more sophisticated work faster than I would have had I worked with a larger firm. It was so transformative for me. And I tell that story as a life lesson for others. There are going to be things that you can't control, but you can control what you do once they happen.
You mentioned about recruiter. I have some kind of opinions about recruiter, and some people saying that you should just go directly to the firms, directly to the company instead of going through a recruiter. Is that wrong to go with recruiter, or is better if you just go directly to the firms?
I think it really depends. And that story was, I'm looking at my clock right now to get the year. So that was over 25 years ago. And jobs weren't so prevalently posted online as they are now. And so for a large geographic move, I think at that point in time, I probably wouldn't have been able to make it without the help of a person who was physically in the city I wanted to move to. Everything is different now. You can find a variety of jobs on LinkedIn, on Indeed, even on state society job boards, right? Every CPA state society is helping people in their state and their members to find good, strong, talented employees. So it's definitely different now. And I think it's whatever the comfort zone is, whatever your comfort zone is, and how good you feel about introducing yourself to others. It's back to that networking, right? Are you comfortable doing that on your own, or do you feel better with a little bit of help?
That's really interesting, because that's true. Right now, you can find jobs anywhere because social media is just so strong. Internet is just so strong. You can find a job through someone else's post, and you don't even know who that person is.
Yes.
Just say, oh, I need this job. Or sometimes when you use social media, it just pops up on your screen. And I was like, okay, I can check it out. And I don't even know what this job is, who's advertised this job, what the company is like. Sometimes I feel like it's just amazing how social media takes you to anywhere, not just about the job, maybe about life journey, maybe you find your friends, your partners. It's just very, very amazing.
The power of the algorithm is almost incomprehensible. I'm sure if you clicked on, I know that you recently went through a job search, and I'm sure as soon as you clicked on a certain job title, every time you opened any sort of social media, you were flooded with similar jobs. And it does make it easier, I think, to identify when you want to make a position move or a career move. You can find them, and you can find more of them faster.
Yeah, talking about getting the career move faster, you mentioned about working at the medium-sized firm, give you opportunities to learn a lot faster. Do you recommend people to start at the medium, small-sized firms instead of big-sized firms?
I don't think so. When even the larger firms will have not so massive clients, right? Of course, the large firms do have some clients where the audit team is there almost every week of the year because they're constantly auditing or looking or evaluating. But there are smaller clients in the big firms where they're not several week-long audits. And especially now that technology has aided the profession so much, some of the time ticking and tying, testing for various transactions has come down. And I think it's just really finding your niche and finding the people that you want to work around, the type of clients that you want to work for, and all the extracurriculars that you can do, right? Is there a young professionals part of your organization? If you're a woman, is there a woman's professional network inside your organization? Are you encouraged to be a member of your state society and join in some of those activities and network with your peers who are still your peers, even though they're outside of your organization? What else is important to you? Your career is very important. First of all, you're going to do it for a very long time. Second of all, it's going to bring you your paycheck. But there's going to be more than simply the work that comes with any choice that you make. So whichever place feels most comfortable to you, and you can get everything back out of it that you're putting in.
So how did you know that you got enough at the GSSM and then you move to become assistant controller and controller after that?
I felt very comfortable in what I was doing on a day-to-day basis, and I wanted more. And I felt like I could get more by moving out of public and into industry at that time. I also wanted a viewpoint beyond simply the accounting into more of the how does the organization work. And at that point in my career, I felt like by moving into a controller role with an industry job, that I would get that. And wow, did I ever. What was so unique at the time that I moved to Centex Homes is the controller roles were heavily involved in the operations of the organization. Now, whether or not that was normal, I have no idea. I only have an N of one to compare it to. I only worked for that very single manufacturing organization. A home builder is a manufacturing organization. But that changed so much about the course of my career because I really moved at that point from finance and accounting into operations and then strategic operations, which is where I've been almost ever since. And the innovation and the understanding how operations can run more efficiently and the strategies behind taking advantage of growth opportunities or making sure that you don't endanger your organization by being stagnant and falling behind. Like, that's where it changed for me. And so that was really a pivotal move. It was a transformative role. And I'm extremely grateful for it.
I'm curious, when you moved to private at that position, were you so excited that you did not have to worry about billable hours?
I can tell you that no, I still, myself and some of the other people would still shut down the office on a regular basis. It still worked quite a bit. What it did change for me, and this isn't universal, but what it did change for me was I was almost always in the same physical location instead of traveling around the geographic area like I would when I was visiting clients, which gave me the opportunity to streamline my life a little bit more so that I could study for the CPA exam. And so that was the big change for me. It wasn't so much necessarily the hours, it was always being in the same office so that I could get to that study group and so that I could focus on everything I needed to learn to successfully pass those 4 parts.
So you didn't take CPA exam right after you graduate. It took you several years in your career.
I took it. I certainly showed up and took that exam. I didn't get a passing score while I was in public. It was really challenging for me. And it might not have been public. It very well could have been my maturity level, whether or not I was ready for it, if I had the discipline to sit down and put that work in. But I graduated from college early. I was 21 when I graduated. So I do think taking that extra 2 to 3 years probably is more of what helped me versus no longer being in public. And it still took me a long time to pass the exam. That's why it hangs there over my shoulder so that I'm reminded of how hard I worked for that piece of paper.
I always tell people that I would do my best to never, ever, ever have to take that exam again.
I mean, I have so many stories of the exams. When I took the exam, it wasn't a computer-based exam. It was Scantron. If you don't remember what Scantron is, it was the answer sheet where you filled in the bubbles with your pencil, your number 2 pencil, and you had to fill in the bubbles very precisely. It was almost a work of art compared to anything else. And it was really, it was a pressure cooker.
I remember a lot of people share with me that you did not have a lot of options to pick the exam date at that time. Mm-mm. You have only twice or 3 times per year to take it?
Yes, you as the test taker had 0 options. The testing authorities told you when you would be there. So it was always the first week of May and the first week of November, and everyone went. And in order to administer the tests, the states would have locations, usually in like larger cities, so in major cities, in a conference room. And so if you can envision walking into a conference center and the conference center floor or the exhibit hall, if you typically go to a conference and they have an exhibit hall with all the vendors, that's the space you are in. And they had the tables, those really long, however many foot tables, 12-foot tables, and you had a candidate seated at each end of the table, presumably so you couldn't see that other person's answers. And it was just rows and rows of people taking the exam. You weren't allowed to get up out of your seat. I remember that for the first hour, you had to stay in your seat. So if you needed a restroom break, it had to wait. And you sat there until you were done, and then you turned in your test booklet and went on about your day.
It's amazing how things change. It's so much better now.
I don't know. It's just different, right? And it continues to change. And that's one of the things that I really appreciate about the profession is we've changed along with the industry, the world, the technology, everything else. The exam went through a significant change again this year. There's I can't remember what they call it. Do you know? I should know this off the top of my head. But there's the standardized portion, and then there's a choice you can make for your fourth part based on what you want your specialization to be. Maybe it is called specialization.
The BEC? You're talking about the BEC section? Yeah.
Yes. And I think that's fabulous that it continues to change based on the needs of not only our industry, but all industries, because accountants work in all industries.
Well, talking about picking a niche, a lot of students, they like to take the exam right after they graduate. And at that time, how do they know that they want to do audit to the rest of their career? How do they know that they want to do tax to the rest of their career? Because it took me 5 years to figure out what I wanted. And I got my master's degree in accounting because I thought I'm going to be an auditor. I'm going to make a partner in one day as an auditor, working for 1 year, only 1 year in audit. I said that if this was not for me, I'm going to move to tax, and I love it. And I wish I could take master degree in taxation instead of just accounting in general. So I think that's good. Some people may need time to figure out which section they want to take.
I think that's a very interesting take. And for me personally, what helped me get through the exam as I gained more experience, as I worked longer, was having real-world examples to apply to the theory and the calculations and the work that needed to be understood for me to pass the exam. I love that some people are able to pass several parts straight out of college. They are able to study and understand things in a way that at that point in my life I wasn't. Having the real-world experience for me to apply to whatever the teachings or the learnings were was critical for my ability to pass.